Hello everyone, Try-Catch Angler here. Today I will continue with a series on creating a React application to run within SharePoint. What we will be covering is how we can connect the application to SharePoint and get data using Patterns and Practices JavaScript library. Before we begin, I want to share with you some of the tools that you're going to need to be successful in completing this task. First thing you're going to need is this SP Editor extension that you see on the screen. Go ahead and look for SP Editor on your favorite search service and then add it to your Chrome as an extension. The next thing you're going to need is you're going to need to know a little bit about the documentation on the PnPjs library. This is what Patterns and Practices JavaScript library that allows you to connect to SharePoint using REST to get data. The next thing you're going to need also is an extension for Visual Studio Code. And this extension is called Json to TS. The best thing about this is that basically it'll take the JSON objects and it'll give you a TypeScript interface. The benefit that you get from a TypeScript interface is that it's going to give you that really nice IntelliSense that allows you to create this program without any kind of bugs, or at least mitigate as much as possible, because we're using TypeScript, we're creating a type-safe application, and that's going to make us very successful. With that, how about we get started? First thing we're going to do is take our boilerplate app and make a duplicate. To do that, we're going to go into the console and type in cp-r boilerplate app, and our new folder is going to be called Tacklebox. That will create a new folder called Tacklebox, and it's going to be exactly the same. Once you have copied that over, let's go ahead and move into that directory. So change directory, Tacklebox. Now that we're inside of Tacklebox, let's go ahead and run npmi to install all the dependencies. While those install, I want to point out that the boilerplate app is just an empty shell, does not have the node modules. So we expand it, you'll notice that it doesn't have a node modules folders like the Tacklebox is getting right now because we're installing the dependencies. This is always preferred because we just want the boilerplate app to just be an empty shell, giving us a starting point every time we want to create a new React application. Now, everything is installed. Now we move to setting up PnP to connect to SharePoint. To do that, let's go ahead and create a new folder, and we're going to call it utils, which is short for utilities. In the utilities folder, we're going to create a reusable hook. We're going to call it use pnp.ts. And this is going to be, if we're going to basically create a functional component, just an empty shell of a component for now. And we're going to import a couple of things. The first thing that we're going to import is sp from @pnp/sp. Next thing we're going to import is web from @pnp/sp/webs. Those two imports are going to be necessary for us to complete a connection to the SharePoint site using PnP. And for now, let's set this component to return an empty object. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a use effect hook. And the use effect is basically just a way for us to be able to have this run when this component is referenced, or this reusable hook is referenced. Let's go ahead and create a function. It's going to be called fetch. And in the fetch function, this is going to be, and we're going to make it an asynchronous function. And in this asynchronous function, we're going to add a try catch. Try catch. And our try catch, first thing we're going to do is we're going to try to set up our base URL for the application. And to get our URL, we can look at our window object, get our location, get the href for the location, and use the split method. And we're going to be splitting the method at the site assets. And from that split method, we basically want to get the first item in that array. Oh, there's no dot needed here. So basically what happens with the split method is that it literally splits the string, which is your URL, splits it into two, where that site assets is at, that keyword site assets, splits it, and then I'm saying, give me everything before the site assets, right? So that's why there's a 0, because if you know anything about arrays, arrays always start with 0. So you have arrays starting at 0, 1, 2, etc. So that's what we're doing there. And with that, we're going to be setting the web to our new base URL. So now that our web is set, so basically what you're saying is set my current context. Where am I at? Like what site am I at? And obviously this is dynamic. That's the reason we're using the window location href, because you can put this application on any site, and you want to be able to have the dynamics behind the URL. You don't want to have to put in a static value, because then every time that you're building an application or you move this application to another SharePoint site, then it becomes a problem. So with that being said, now we're going to run our setup for PnP. So let's type in sp.setup. And inside of the sp.setup, we're going to put inside of the object the sp object and our base URL, which is basically going to be the same as the base URL that we just obtained. And with that, our connection is basically set up for PnP. And inside of our catch, we can just console out any error that we have gotten inside of the try catch. All right. And then finally, outside of the fetch function, we're going to actually have to now execute it. So fetch, and there we go. Our function is set up. And we have basically set up a connection for us to be able to configure PnP to work with our SharePoint site. So we save that. Now, we have to have a reason to reach out and get this reusable hook. And a lot of the times, I mean, 9 times out of 10, most of your applications, you're going to have to get the name of the user, right? So let's go ahead and work on that, because we're going to need a reason to reach out to this hook. We need to have it return something. So we're going to have it return the current username. First thing we're going to do is we're going to go to our browser and we're going to use the SP editor extension. So to use the extension, I'm going to close this out. Just basically right click anywhere on your SharePoint site and you select inspect. You click on the SharePoint tab and we're going to open the PnP console. If you are working with a SharePoint on-premises site, this is only required if you're working with a SharePoint site that is on-premises. If you're working on SharePoint Online, typically this is not required. So let's go ahead and work on getting our user. So For our user, let's look at our documentation for PnPjs. And we're going to be looking for a current user. Oh, there it is, current user. So the first thing you notice is that you're going to have to bring in these two imports. So let's go back into our Visual Studio Code, bring in those two imports that it's asking for. So we're going to say let user, like it says right here, let user equal await sp.web.current user. And the really cool thing or neat thing about it is that it actually has IntelliSense. So we can say await sp.web. Let me just paste it, make it easier on myself. So again, await sp.web.current user. And we're going to console this out. All right. And the really neat thing about this is that you don't have to go back and forth between console. Let's clear this up a little bit. And SharePoint. You don't have to do that. You can just press the escape key on your keyboard and then it'll open the console. And it says hit Control D to run the code. So let's do that. Let me clean it up, run it again. And here's our object. Now remember that extension that I told you about Json to TS? Let's copy this object and go into our Visual Studio Code, and we're gonna press and hold Control Shift P on your keyboard, and we're gonna type in JSON to TS. And you notice that it says JSON to TS convert from clipboard. And when you click on it, here's our interface. How neat is that? I think that's pretty awesome. So that being said, let's clean some of this up because we obviously won't need this. And let's actually rename this and then change it to a type. So let's say type profile type equals. And now let's keep our ID, login name, title, principal type, email. I don't think we really need these, so we're going to take a lot of this off. We might need is site admin, so let's go ahead and keep that. User ID, user principal name, we don't need that. Let's get rid of that. And that's it. This is our type. This is how we now have IntelliSense. And that's the beauty of being able to do this, because whenever you get any kind of information from SharePoint, you'll be able to have it type ready or type safety involved there. So now that that's done, let's go ahead and add something to our function here to get our information. So after we've done our setup right here, let's go ahead and add our code. And we can actually take the code from our SP editor. So on SP editor, let's go ahead and copy this. I think we should create a state for it. How about we do that? So let's go up here. We're going to create a state. And the state is going to be called user profile. Set user profile is equal to use state from React. And the use state for that, we're going to have to set it up. Again, going back to type safety. Let's make it of type profile type, or it can be null, right? Because initially it's going to be null. So we can set it to null. And since we have our profile, we can say set user profile to user. And now we are returning an object with these properties. That's really awesome. Now, obviously, we need to return that user profile. And so we need to create a type of what this reusable hook is going to return. So let's create a type and let's call it use sp PnP results or result. And we are going to return a user profile, which is what we stored in our state. And that's going to have a type of profile type, or it can be null. In our return statement, we're going to return our state, user profile. And what that does, it'll make our reusable component be able to return the user profile. And this is basically going to be called whenever we initialize the application. Oh, and we created a type, but we didn't use it. So we're going to use that. And basically, we're going to be returning this result. And that should make our reusable hook type safe. Because we're saying that this use PnP is going to return the results, which the results is going to include a variable called user profile. And now, with that, we basically connected to SharePoint. Now, or we created basically the plug to connect us to SharePoint. Now it's time to take that plug and connect it to the wall. That is exactly what we're going to do on our next video. Thank you for spending time with me, and don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one.